Okay, in this video, this is the first in a series regarding the new augmented. It's been out since 3.0. It's a super powerful programming tool. And so this video, we're going to talk about one of the often understood or frustrating points of positioning moving fixtures, which is X, Y, and Z or X, Y, and Z, and how that ties in with augmented versus just using conventional pan and tilt. So this video is going to explore that topic and shows you how perhaps you can level up your use of positioning using augmented instead of simply pan and tilt positions. Okay, in this example, we're going to talk about XYZ coordinates for pointing your moving lights. A lot of people coming from other lighting systems or upgrading from 2.9 to newer, we're running the situation that what you'll find here is on your encoders is that you can accidentally, especially if you hit it again, you'll get these XYZ coordinates as opposed to your pan and tilt that you're used to. And that can cause you some grief when you're first getting started. And so the default here is for us as we record things as pan and tilt positions. So with augmented here, we'll set an example here. And what's nice is I can select lights 3 and 4, and while holding down shift, I can actually point the lights where I want them to be. But let's just do it the manual way you might want to do it with actual encoders here. So I'm going to just positionally bring these where we want that to be. So there's 3. And then we'll bring 4 here. And so we'll record that look into Q1 and overwrite that. And then we're going to go ahead and now change it so that both lights are pointing the second tilt. In fact, what I'll do is I'll show you that. I'll hold down shift and I'll just click on him. And now we have the lights there, and I'll record that. Sorry, we'll record that into Q2. So now when we go back to Q1, they're there, and Q2 is here. And then what you'll run into if you haven't, and this is probably more important in 2 different scenarios. One is your traveling show, your trim height changes from show to show, or venue to venue. So we'll start with that. I'm going to grab channels 3 and 4 and change their trim height now down to 25 feet, so a lower trim height. And now when we go into live and we're looking at that, because we're storing pan and tilt positions, you can see as we go up between Q1 and Q2, since the lights are in different positions, now you've got to go and reset all of your focus palettes based off of those positions, which, as you can see, they don't line up well. The second scenario you might run into, and this is what occurs more often for me, is the fact is that the talent's position on the stage remains unchanged. However, we might change the set over the course of a period of time. And so now those fixtures are no longer located in those same positions. And so by way of example, I'm going to take channels 3 and 4. And now instead of being 10 feet upstage, I'm going to move them 15 feet. Let's move them 10 feet downstage. And we're going to take fixture 3, and we're going to rotate him 90 degrees, and we'll take fixture 4, and we'll move that negative 90 degrees. And so this might represent more from going from backlights to side lights, or perhaps you add side lights to this particular rig. Without understanding X and Y, as I go between Q1 and 2, you see that those cues or those positions are utterly useless. And so what we'll do here is let me reset those back. So we'll go back into patch and we'll grab fixtures 3 and 4. We'll set their Z rotation to 0 and their X to 10. And then we'll go back into live and we'll take a look at that. And now, hey, we're back. We're happy. But this is the result of storing purely X, Y, or pan and tilt information. So instead of that, what we're going to do is we're going to take 1, or we're going to take 3 and 4, and let me just home their positions for the moment. So we'll home those, and then I'm going to open up my encoder display here, and depending on the version, this looks slightly different. This is version 3.3. I'm going to click on the 3 dots and change from pan tilt to the XYZ format. And what you'll immediately see here on pan and tilt is that the pan and tilt goes gray and the XYZ turns red, which means that's the data you're actually storing. And so, for example, I can take just fixture 3 and I can go ahead and point it at the person. And now I can go channel 3 and I can say focus, copy to 4. And now 4 is going to find that position as well because it knows where it is in 3D space. So first of all, now I can take any fixture in the venue, and as long as it's properly hung and augmented, I can actually point the fixture in that position. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and record that into Q1. And then I'm going to take fixture 3 again. We're going to point it to this guy over here. And then again, I'm going to do focus. So we put focus on the command line, and we're going to say copy to fixture 4. And there we are. That's exactly what we're looking for. So I'll record this into Q2. And so while now it looks basically the same and uninspired, and what's the point? That's just extra work. First, what we'll do is I'll show you here on the channel view. You can see that the data here started in the X and Y instead of pan and tilt, which is where it was before. But back into patch now, this is where the magic happens, where if we change trim heights from 35 feet to 25 feet, and we go back into this, now from Q to Q, they're actually where they need to be. Now, of course, the lights are physically closer, so things like focus might need to be adjusted. Some fine deal regarding things like either your iris or your focus or your zoom, or some of those settings might need to change because it's changed. That element has changed. But as far as where the focus is, where we're pointing the fixture, those are already set, and you might need to fine tune them a little bit, but that gets you like 95% of the way. But it gets even better because in my environment, for example, those fixtures, or I might add fixtures. So why don't we do that? Let's add fixtures 5 and 6, and we'll start with patch, and we'll set their type to some halcyons, and then I'll go ahead and just address those as well since we're here. And then now in augmented, what we're going to do is we'll show it here, and we're going to set a trim height, and maybe these are at 20 feet up, and our Y position is there at -10. And then our position on stage is -20 through 20, so that spreads those out. And those are those. Maybe we'll spread them out even more, 30. And there we have it. So now we've got these positions. If we go back out into live, now I can take, let's see, that was fixture 5 and 6. We'll bring those up to full. And now I can take channels 3, and we'll put focus on the command line, and we're going to copy to that to 5 and 6. And hey, look at that. They're also now pointing in the right direction. And so here you can, without having to take time to fiddle in, I can add a fixture at any point, and as long as it's in the correct 3-dimensional space, I can add a fixture, and as I add fixtures, they can also point to those same positions, because we're not pointing to a pan and tilt position, but we're pointing specifically to this position, which is 6 feet and 1 inch off center stage to the left, and our Y position is -21 feet and 4 inches downstage from center with a Z focus of 0, which is its height. And then just so you can see what height does is that gives us the ability, if I was to grab all of those, let's set that back to 0. If I was to grab 3 through 6, and I was to bring the focus up, you can see as it goes up the height of the person, the relative height of the person, so that we're hitting their head instead of their feet. And so we understand all 3 places of coordinate in space. And so you can, I think here you can see the power of perhaps you're on a show that changes venue to venue, or might have trim height or positional differences. By using XYZ coordinates, they're going to hit the right place to the accuracy in which they're set up in the model, and you've physically mounted them. The other thing it helps for is if you're adding fixtures, or in my case, what I might do sometimes is I might actually do a change here, and now all of a sudden my position of fixtures 3 and 4 are now going to be much closer together. So they'll be 5 feet left and right of center here. And so now when we're looking at it, those are still maintaining, even though they've physically moved in closer, because maybe that works better, or we've decided we need to add a set piece that now will block those lights. Now all of a sudden, those lights are still going to be pointed in the right direction. And of course, the reason we don't see the 2 new lights, 5 and 6, moving is those aren't actually stored in queues. So as I move these, go to this channel 3, record focus palette 1 by type. And then I'll take channel 4, record focus palette 2 by type. So now if I do 3 through 6, focus palette 1, focus palette 2, there we go. But again, now if we restore that, no matter what light we add into the rig, and so I showed you just adding more halcyons, but if we went in here and I added, just as an example, if I was to add channel 10 in patch type, and now we're going to find something completely different. I'm going to choose like an elation fuse profile extended, and we're going to set an address for that, and then again give it some positional data. We're going to set it center stage. We're going to set it 15 feet upstage, and we're going to set a trim height of 37 feet. Kind of an odd position, but just to have some visual separation there. So now you see channel 10 there, and I turn it on full. And now what we can do is, well, I can't do focus palette 1 because focus palette 1 is still set by fixture type. I can say fixture 10 focus recall from 3, and it's going to grab that positional data as well. And so now I can do 10 record or update focus palette 1. And then we can go to focus palette 2 on fixtures. We can even just take 3 focus palette 2. And so I can take 3 focus, copy to 10, same way to get to the same information. I'm going to update focus palette 2. And so now I can take channels 3 through 10 and set the focus palette 1, focus palette 2. And so now you can see how if we've got spike marks for certain talent in certain places on the stage, drum riser, whatever else like that, regardless of the fixture I add, I don't have to take the time to dial in those positions. Another place this really helps is when you're working in blind or if you're using staging mode, because now if all of a sudden you realize that a person has moved from one position to another, you can precisely focus there because we've stored focus palettes based off of these specific positions. So hopefully that's some helpful information. A little bit of bumbling around there in the middle, making focus palettes. The focus of this one isn't necessarily on training on focus palettes. There's other great videos about that. But specifically dealing here with storing it as XYZ values instead of pan tilt. And then just a reminder here on your encoder display, when I click on the 3 dots, you see this XYZ format versus pan tilt format. And you see that that toggles it here in your ML controls, so you know which values are being stored and which values are being calculated based off of those active values. And just as one final note on this as well, when do I use one versus the other? It might be self-evident here, but just to call out, I don't store all my focus palettes as XYZ or all as pan tilt. It really depends on what we're pointing at. So if I'm pointing at a fixed space in my physical environment, which might be towards a spike mark or a talent or a drum riser or some key set piece, that is where if I have lights pointing at something, I'm typically going to choose XYZ. However, if what I'm looking for instead of pointing at an object is pointing at a like beam effects, like straight out, straight down, things like that, where, for example, what we might be actually going for is a homed value of all beams pointing straight down. Each fixture is pointing to a very specific and different space in the venue. However, they're all pointing to a pan tilt value of 0, 0. So if I'm pointing at a thing, then I'm going to use XYZ. It's more about the way the beams are all looking, such as they're all tilting back, or in this case, maybe they're all tilting forward and out. That would be an example of where I would store pan tilt data, because everything is at, say, a pan of 0 and a tilt of -60, as opposed to the fact that as we scroll through these fixtures, you see that their focus positions are changing, right? So here we've got -5 and 5. And then here we change not only X, Y, we also change Z on these. And so you can see as we go through each of these, they've all got different values here. And that's just to point out the fact that I wouldn't store that as a XYZ, I'd store that as a pan tilt, especially when we start getting to things like if I take like 3 and 4, and then I do a center fan, and now I'm spreading those out. My center fan has less to do with where those beams are pointing and more to the fact that they're fanning outward. So hopefully that helps, lets you know when to use pan and tilt versus XYZ, and also helps clear out why XYZ exists and why it can be a powerful tool that you can add to your programming.